When it came to poets in Cleveland, Ohio, Terry Provost, he's a giant. And I'm not only saying that because I'm 5 foot 2 inches tall. He really, first time I saw him read, I was really taken aback. And he had such a soft demeanor. His poetry it crept up on you. And then it grabbed you by your throat, and before you knew it, you were on the ground, gasping for air. This reading is for Karen and Jackson. The first poem I just wrote. It's entitled Bursting Through Unconsciousness Number 2. He's gone. Another poet dead and buried. He shot pomp and circumstance in the head. He wasn't full of shit and sadness like too many Cleveland poets. First time I saw him read, I felt both unnerved and like I'd been hugged by the universe. His hunger never abated, and his quest for knowledge never satiated. He was the first poet astronaut I've ever met. He introduced me to the cosmos when he laid down his words like a red carpet of blood and synapses. The news of his passing punched me in the gut, and I swear I'll never be the same again. One of the good ones who knew the jig was up and never judged the foxes too harshly for raiding the hen house. He's out of here. Another poet shot into space. He introduced each and every one of us to a kind heart and the beauty of an unabashed shooting star. I love and already terribly miss you, Terry. You're in my heart. You're in my heart. It started at the beginning, bursting through consciousness. When I got the news that Terry was in hospice, I wrote these poems. Rocket science poet, teacher of the analytical mind, Einstein has nothing on you. Striving to be all you can be, chips down, but never counted out. Receiving messages from another side. The conscious mind is subjective. It's true. Ask any daydreamer or merchant of nightmares. We're at our best when we cross the Rubicon. I've never had much faith and hope. Disappointment puts the fear of a manufactured God into me. I wanted to hold his hand, but he was wearing gardening gloves and refused to return my telepathic messages. Rocket scientist, rock star, professor of the unanalyzed and unresolved riddles of the Sphinx, our loved ones mustn't catch up with us while we're running outside of time and mindfulness. I met him, and I liked him immediately. I think it was at Mayhall's. He cut through the poetic fat of a city starving for more steak. Terry challenges us to resist mediocrity and go for the gold standard. Our unconscious mind, the first step toward freedom of creative autonomy. A lesson we must learn before taking off our training wheels. Love is the realest construct of them all. Love. There's a bird outside singing. Bursting through consciousness number 2. Punching the clock is a concept well past its expiration date. Our souls must thrive, not be imprisoned or starved. Feeding our consciousness best be our number one priority. Otherwise, what's the point of temporary insanity? Lucy was never going to give Charlie Brown the satisfaction of kicking the football. But Charlie possessed a kind of hope which never bordered on naivete or stubborn ignorance. Our country teeters on planned obsolescence while continuing to throw the baby out with the lead bathwater. We'll never learn. We'll never learn. As 19 dead children become yet another footnote in our confrontational history where gun ownership trumps a child's right to grow up. Punching the clock is a slave mentality, which rots us through and through as capitalism sits on our faces and takes a shit on the pursuit of happiness. What Terry Provost always represented to me is a juggernaut of clarity in a disingenuous society of widgets and whack-a-mole bean counters. When he got up on that stage and roared his poetry, you knew words had consequences. Our cartoon lives another fish wrapped obituary that no fishwife could render useful or tasty in the least little bit. Our misanthropic lives as dense as Russian literature because we refuse to see the protagonist through the strip-mined trees. All I want for Hanukkah is a romance I can believe in. And all I want for Terry and his family, the beauty of an enduring conversation of trust. Trust. Bursting through consciousness number 3. The stained glass, our unconscious mind, a revelatory conclusion to the heresy of a concussed life. Even Moses stammered and stuttered in the eye of a Pharaoh's disapproval. We mustn't allow ourselves to believe we're landlocked. The universal mind, far more equipped for a prison break than you can possibly imagine. None of us are limited. If we set our minds out of bounds and break on through the tyranny of man-made labor and fear. I'm not dreaming as I write this, but if I were, I would be Harold, and the purple crayon would drive me, like my brother's Suzuki GS 1100 around the cautionary bend on Rocky River. We're all hard-boiled eggs whose yolk teeters on losing its sense of humor as we ride off into the sunset like Zane Grey cowpunchers. My spiritual animal is Red Skeleton, as another dad joke falls flat, and I climb the monkey bars in my recessed and conclave mind. I wished to visit Terry in hospice because I believed I could offer some solace and perhaps a dash of serenity to the place where he now floats. The glass bead game is indeed real, and to gain entrance you best renounce your citizenship and bask in the profound absurdity of our ancient minds. The terror of isolation overrated. Once we stand firm on accepting we are loved, as the creative mind forms a chrysalis around our butterfly godheads, and we are free to fly through the blue untethered skies. This is the last poem I'd like to read. This is entitled Bursting Through Unconsciousness. Put on your spacesuit. You're walking into outer space. The atmosphere no longer your primary objective. Poets dive into their head games. Lenin erected and deconstructed walls and bridges at the drop of a hat. Even Marx was known to fire up the old sickle and hammer and paint the Gorodoc sanguine. A new lease on life overrated. Best to grab hold of your loved one's hand and never let go. Something's burning as my eyes become disabused by a pyromaniac bear. Put on your snowshoes. Alaska has never looked more palatial or confused, like a grizzly mom changing her political stripes. At one time, she could see Russia from her window. Now she sees Cleveland and a whole other burning river. Anti-heroes drive off thematic cliffs. Thelma and Louise never would have guessed Hollywood would stop calling. Cage and Thornton need to stop believing their publicists because whatever that is on their heads, it doesn't even look remotely natural. An assault rifle tears the hearts out of the audience's sensitivity to real life. When a 10-year-old has to cover herself in a dead classmate's blood to stay alive, something needs to change pronto. Jesus wept. And the 3 wise men stopped going on casting calls because they were tired of being typecast for erectile dysfunction commercials. I'm thinking about you, Terry. I wish we would have gotten to do that featured reading together. I really do. My name is Charles Cicirella. I really miss you terribly. You really are a giant.